Wizards of the Coast has recently announced the concept of 100 card historic brawl, which brings up some interesting questions. One, is Commander actually going to end up on Arena? Or two, even crazier, will 100 card historic brawl one day become the main event in terms of casual play, replacing Commander and being the biggest thing in Magic the Gathering? Also, we have some unbannings to talk about.
Magic. History.
I'm an old wizard!
The Magic Historian.
My bones hurt. Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, I hope the day finds you well. Now, before we dive into the subject matter for the day, I just want to reiterate the message that I gave yesterday. YouTube is doing what seems to be its annual bot sweep. So if you actually are someone who makes YouTube videos, you'll notice up at the top of your dashboard, it says over the next couple of days, you may notice a decrease in subscriber count. That's because we're removing bot accounts. Now, the reason I bring this up is simply because some people get swept up in this who aren't bots. And so you're going to want to check on all of the YouTube channels that you actually care to be subscribed to that you are still subscribed. Now, that's out of the way. Let's talk about this 100 card historic brawl and an unbanning. So it says on June 18th, FNM at Home will feature a 100 card historic brawl event. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I may not know this. I don't stay as up to date with arena news as I do with like paper physical Magic news, but I believe this is really the first foray that we are making into 100 card brawl style, especially with historic. I mean, it'd probably be more difficult to do with standard, let's be real. Brawl has some stumbling blocks when it comes to standard. So anyways, it's saying on June 18th, Friday Night Magic at Home will feature a 100 card historic brawl event. So that's in a couple days. Play for free to try it out. Then on June 19th, starting at 8 a.m., we'll launch a 100 card historic brawl event that runs through June 25th. So essentially for a week. Given Historic's larger card pool, we believe 100 card decks, including the Commander, makes sense for the Historic side of Brawl, but we wanted to see it in action before committing to a decision. Historic Brawl fans, check it out and let us know what you think. Entry for the Historic Brawl event following FNM at Home is 2,500 gold or 500 gems. You can earn the following Japanese Mystic Archive styles for win. So they've got D-Spark, Lightning Helix, Electrolyze, Gross Bile, and Putrefy. Let's be real. Those are fairly low-level rewards in terms of what they're given, but that's because they know for this, when it comes to Brawl, people are willing to pay just to get to play Brawl. So Wizards takes advantage of that to get a little bit of resources from you, right? So, originally when they came up with the concept of Brawl, Wizards of the Coast was trying to create a standard version of Commander. That's supposed to be the idea behind it. Now, Brawl and Commander aren't exactly identical. There are some tweaks to Brawl that don't exist with Commander. So Brawl uses a lesser life total. It also doesn't care about the Commander damage rule. If you're not familiar with the Commander damage rule, basically you have 40 life in Commander. However, if you take 21 damage from a particular commander, whoever's commander. If I have a commander named Billy the Goat Hugger, and Billy the Goat Hugger hits you enough, then you lose the game. So the threshold for that is 21 damage done by any particular commander. So if you lose more than half your health to a commander, you auto lose the game. Now that is not one of the rules in Brawl. Brawl also opens up the rules a little more loosely in terms of who you can use as your commander. In Commander, you can only use legendary creatures with a few planeswalker exceptions. So there are planeswalkers that specifically have printed on them. They can be used as your commander. And there's also Grist, who doesn't specifically say that, but because he counts as a 1/1 insect everywhere but in play, counts as a legendary creature and can be used as your commander, right? So Brawl does have, honestly, fewer restrictions in terms of what you can use from the perspective of your commander, but obviously when it comes to standard Brawl, you can only use cards from standard. And let's be real, when Brawl first came out, it flopped miserably. Wizards of the Coast tried it in the physical realm. They gave us actual Brawl decks, right? Here you go. Here's some Brawl decks. We came up with this Brawl concept. Although the Brawl decks weren't actually initially released with Brawl. The very, very, very initial launch of Brawl was basically just like, check it out, we made this Brawl format. It was set up to coincide with the release of Dominaria, because Dominaria was going to have a legendary in every pack. So they kind of thought, you know what, let's make a mini Commander variant that you can use with these standard cards. But the unfortunate part is they didn't do anything to basically manage the format. So Brawl was ruined by the card Brawl, which is hilarious because it just sounds like you're mispronouncing Brawl or saying Brawl a different way, right? So Brawl ruined Brawl, and Brawl just kind of went bloop and disappeared for a while. And then they reinvigorated it by giving it physical decks with the Throne of Eldraine release. But again, that wasn't enough to really gain any traction. In fact, the Brawl decks mainly only sold because they had arcane signets in them, and there were people who wanted the arcane signets or particular other cards for them specifically to use for Commander. So instead of birthing a new format, Brawl was essentially cannibalized for Commander, right? And that is not what Wizards of the Coast wanted. But now, Brawl has found itself a happy home on Arena in a digital format where regular Commander isn't available. A number of people still enjoy Brawl because while Brawl isn't Commander, it does offer a similar-ish experience, right? They are both singleton formats, so you get a wide variety of cards. You have the same Commander, Command Zone style concept. So it's really like Commander Light. If you can't get the thing you actually want, it's the next best thing, and Arena doesn't currently offer Commander. So we started out with just Brawl being standard, and then they introduced the idea of Historic Brawl, right? And Historic Brawl is basically everything that exists on Arena with the exception of a handful of cards that have caught the ban hammer for very obvious reasons, right? There's certain cards where it's like, okay, you can't really use this. It doesn't really mesh with the format. Not all Magic cards that are designed are ready to go into that kind of environment. But regardless, you had a scenario with Historic Brawl where now you had a slightly better version of Standard Brawl, right? Because you have access to far more cards. Arena hasn't been around for that long, but it's been around for enough years that there are a number of sets that exist only in Historic now, and on top of that, you have Historic Anthology. So this opened up a lot more play. Now, Wizards had stepped it up to the next level by going 100 card Historic Brawl, which is very, very similar to Commander. And I don't mean that from the perspective of the access to all the cards, because let's be real, that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks for Commander on Arena is accessibility to all of the older stuff, right? If Wizards of the Coast came along and said, we put Commander into Arena, players would immediately be like, wait a minute, you barely have anything available. And secondly, and this is a big one, and this is actually probably the biggest one, you can't play Brawl more than 2-player. Right? So if they brought Commander onto Arena and just said you can only play 2-player, that's not going to make people happy. Well, it's going to make some people happy. But there are going to be a bunch of people who say, well, Commander is about the multiplayer experience, so how are you going to deliver that to us? And it may come in the future that Wizards of the Coast finds a way to actually make 4-player Magic doable. I don't know. I mean, I guess 4 little screens, you can forget about that on a phone, right? That would be crazy. You probably have to click on each person's board state to bring up a bigger version of the board, and that would slow things down. So I don't really think that that's in the cards for mobile, right? I ultimately think, truthfully, that Commander will probably never make it onto Arena. So for Commander to make it onto Arena, you need a few things to happen. The multiplayer, like 4-player style, 5-player style, is not automatically necessary, but for Commander to really flourish, you pretty much need all the cards that exist in Magic the Gathering, right? You need to go all the way back. And I don't see all of Magic sets being released on Arena. I just don't see it happening. If you had asked me a year and a half ago, if Wizards had planned to maybe bring all the sets onto Arena, I might have said yes. But things have changed now. You can see with Wizards abandoning its plans to have this big, like, massive esports league and Arena's the way and pushing you into Arena and going Arena, 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 Arena. I think they've finally seen the writing on the wall that while Arena will totally be a meaningful chunk of Magic the Gathering for some people, it's never going to be the it thing for Wizards of the Coast. I genuinely don't think that Arena will ever be like the de facto Magic experience, right? If they could bring all the cards in for Commander, then perhaps that might be the case, depending, right? If you look at it and go, okay, they've got everything. If they have a nice interface that works and you can just get access to everything, sure. But then you also have the stumbling blocks of how are you going to build out your collection, wild cards and all this other stuff. It's really hard to build up an Arena collection without putting a considerable amount of money into it. So there's a number of stumbling blocks for Commander. The biggest one being the fact that since Arena hasn't succeeded on the level that Wizards of the Coast originally thought it would, I don't see them going back and bringing every old set in when they can just do these historic anthologies, because they can sell those like sets. It lets them avoid problem cards. Like, if you have a set that has a bunch of cards that are going to be a buggy nightmare and you want to bring that set, you can't really be like, yo, we're bringing this set in, but we're not going to bring these 15 cards in. We've just decided not to bring them in because they're too difficult to program. Like MTGO, Magic the Gathering Online, is a great example of how like bugs can make the game really untenable. There are a ton of bugs on MTGO, and that's because they have all the cards on there. So things are constantly breaking when new stuff comes along, different interactions, and you're expected to, as you use MTGO, become accustomed to these bugs and play around them, right? So Arena, for it to get on the level where Commander would be truly viable, would essentially most likely become a programming nightmare that wasn't worth the money they would spend on it. So I think that Arena is no longer absolute priority number one. Wizards of the Coast has seen how much paper Magic they're able to sell, even in times when people can't get out to play and there's no big like pro venues to go to or anything like that. So it seems like they are shifting some of their focus back from Arena and pushing on paper harder, which makes more sense. Let's be real. Paper Magic is better than Arena. But what could happen over time theoretically, and this is totally just a thought exercise, probably not going to happen, but what could theoretically happen is if Arena sticks around for long enough and more newer sets get added in and more things come in from Anthology, there could be a number of players who basically cut their teeth in the game playing on Arena because it's an easy onboard for Magic, right? And then you get more people who are used to playing Historic Brawl. And as they play more and more digitally, they go, well, we can play Historic Brawl in paper, right? Because here's the thing. Magic the Gathering is always bringing in an influx of new players, okay? Like, there's always an influx of new players, and there's always people departing. And there will be mainstays, like me. I've been around with Magic forever. But a lot of people are just here for a transitory period. And that's why you see the shifting in the way things are done over time. There was a time in Magic's history where almost all cards, like changing hands, were done through trading. Very little were financial transactions. But nowadays, it's almost all financial transactions. Even trading is done looking up the values from financial transaction levels. So that is a shift that happened as older school players left the game and newer school players joined the game. So if more people are introduced to the concept of Commander style play through Historic could actually gain more traction until it becomes the de facto style of playing. I mean, there could be some like hybrid variant where you've got a Brawl concept, but it uses all the physical cards that exist, and it's not called Commander anymore. And that way people can use any Planeswalker they want. The Command rule has been gotten rid of. Like, 100-card Historic Brawl and Commander are very, very similar. And the only thing really that Commander has over Historic Brawl is the fact that you have access to all the cards. So as more and more cards become available to Historic Brawl, then there's less of an advantage in Commander's side of the table, right? So it could theoretically happen. It doesn't feel like the most likely turn of events, but I sat down and I thought about it. And I'm like, I could actually see a world where Historic Brawl took over for Commander, and I figured talking about that would be interesting. So you can let me know your thoughts about that. Let's move on to talking about the unbanning side of things, because I did mention that as well. So, unbanned in Historic Brawl, Golos Tireless Pilgrim and Winota Joiner of Forces. Two very powerful cards that I have faced off against a number of times. Winota is just bonkers. Golos is too, for sure, let's be real. But Winota just feels like absolutely insane. Anyhow, it says, since last August, we've been tracking and weighting specific commanders in both Brawl and Historic Brawl. Our goal has been to better match players with similar weighted commanders, keeping the challenge for competitive players while ensuring the formats remain hospitable to casual players. Players with high-powered commanders are more likely to square off against each other, and casual players not looking for that high-powered experience are more likely to face similar opponents. I like this. I don't normally play Brawl very frequently, but one of the things I found most frustrating was when I did, and I would face off against people who are playing dumb, bonkers, insane commanders, where they're just like, Kinnan and all this other stuff, and you're just like, dude, like, I was looking for a chill, more casual style play. But there will always be that divide. First of all, different people's definitions of what's considered casual play, right? Some people go, oh, it's not casual if I don't kill you on the first turn, right? Oh, I didn't blow you out of the water on the first turn. This is a casual deck, bro. It wins on turn 3. And some people's idea of casual are like, yo, let's sit back and just like build up some stuff and then we'll just kind of have a go at each other. And honestly, I trend more towards that latter style of casual play, because that's what actually feels casual to me. I mean, I remember when we started playing Magic and we would play multiplayer games where the game, it wasn't really about like ending and winning the game. It was just about playing Magic. So we had crazy rules like, we're playing a 3 or 4 player game, and when somebody gets knocked out, they just shuffle, like, okay, you're dead. They shuffle their deck back up, and they rejoin the game with like a protective turn shield around them, where it's like for 7 or 10 turns after they rejoin the game, they can't be attacked or you can't influence their cards, right? They're still allowed to smash your stuff off the board, but they're basically like, haha, can't get me. And that just led to like ongoing craziness. Now, obviously, stuff like that is going to be very much suited to taste, right? Depending on what it is you want to get out of your Magic experience. But for me, I like the more casual style. So the idea that I'm not automatically going to be paired up against some bonkers deck when I'm playing my little like silly goofy deck, that's a nice feeling, because it means less concessions. As soon as I saw somebody playing an insanely powerful commander, I'm like, I get it. You want to win right away. So here, let me give you the fastest win humanly possible. I'll just concede right now. And then boom, get out of there. And I'll go and look to play against somebody who wants the same experience as me. That makes sense, right? Anyways, let's continue with what this says here. This has been largely successful. With this system in place, we are now more likely to use weighting rather than banning as a tool for managing very powerful commanders. Players who still really enjoy the experience of playing with those commanders may continue to do so, and players who don't want that high-powered experience can be free from it. This seems like a win-win for everybody. If you want to play big, smashy, insane, crazy stuff that wins right away, you're going to be faced off against those decks, which is how it should be, right? The only people who are going to be disappointed by this are the ones who want to play insanely powerful decks and just want to have a one-sided railroading game where the opponent absolutely can't do anything. And who really cares about making people like that happy? Because that's ultimately the most selfish expression of being like a Magic player, really, where it's like, bro, I want to get to do everything. I want you to get to do nothing. That's not like, you may as well just be playing against some AI at that point. So I like this. Let you, if you're playing what I consider to be the obnoxious tier of commanders, you will be stuck in the land of obnoxiosity, which is where you belong with those decks. And if you decide that you want to play a weaker deck, you're not going to automatically have to face off against these powerful decks, because instead of using a ranking system, now it's ranking the actual commanders instead, which makes a big difference. I personally think that's fantastic, and it leads to less bans, and that's a fantastic thing. The fewer cards that are banned, the more enjoyable experiences we can all have. And so this continues. Therefore, Golos, Tireless Pilgrim, and Winota Joiner forces are now no longer banned in Historic Brawl. As the format develops, we'll continue to adjust weighting of various commanders as appropriate. So, for me, this ultimately seems like the best approach to handling the Brawl scenario. I am curious to see how Brawl will develop, because honestly, when they first brought it to Arena, I wasn't sure it could survive because it had done so poorly out there in the world of paper. But ultimately, Brawl has found itself a happy home on Arena. It has a number of people who are quite pleased with it. So at this point, my friends, let me know what you think about the idea of Historic Brawl theoretically replacing Commander one day. I think it may happen, but it's unlikely. Let me know what you think about the concept of the Unbannings as well. Big shout out to all my patrons. Thank you very much for supporting my channel. And I will see all of you, my friends, all of you, my friends, for the next video.